We are delighted and honored that you've joined us this Wednesday afternoon for Innovate BC. So this is an opportunity where we gather as a family, as a community, just to build on our knowledge base, to learn, to grow, to listen to the story. And I'm looking forward to today's presentation, today's webinar. So welcome our guest speakers. We got Brodie and Jamie here. We're delighted. And again, I've been using delight quite a bit these last few minutes. We're honored that you're here. First and foremost, I always like to just create a moment where we acknowledge creative, we acknowledge, the reason why we're here. The great spirits that we do not walk alone. We walk in creator's world with our relatives, other two-leggeds, our family, chosen family. We acknowledge the gift of this land and creation, the animals, the plants. So we give thanks to all of the gifts that have been given to us so that we can walk well in creator's world. We can do our jobs, we can pursue goodness in our work, in our family, in our home fires. So today, Innovate BC is just an opportunity where we can grow and build our capacity. So we are thankful that you are here. We're thankful that we have this opportunity to gather this way. We got BC, we got Saskatchewan, we got Ontario in the house. I don't know where everybody else is joining us from. Feel free to put that in the chat box. I think it's always important to acknowledge the land in which you live on. I come from a Treaty 4 territory, so I always acknowledge I'm here on Treaty 6. So welcome. So there will be opportunity at the end of the presentation for any questions. We always appreciate when you bring in questions, or maybe you have your own story. We welcome it all. So I'm going to give the introduction of our two guest speakers here in a moment. Today's conversation is around sustainable development approaches from coastal BC. All right, so we have Brodie, who has dedicated his career to Indigenous-led conservation and sustainable development in rural communities throughout British Columbia. He is currently the CEO of Island Coastal Economic Trust and has served in leadership roles with trusts and foundations where he has facilitated the investment of more than 150 million into the startup of numerous companies and entrepreneurial ventures, strategic business acquisitions by First Nations, the construction of major infrastructure and renewable energy projects, science and research initiatives, habitat restoration projects, and the startup of the majority of Indigenous Guardian and stewardship programs now operating across BC's coast. Whew. So doing a lot, supporting a lot. That sounds amazing. He and his partner are grateful that their 3 young children are growing up in the beautiful ancestral territories of a community, the Comox Valley, Vancouver Islands. Awesome. And then we have Jamie Pond, has a mixed background, including both First Nations and Irish heritage. Having lived on the reserve for 12 years, she has developed perspectives from both Indigenous and non-Indigenous culture. Jamie believes her experiences have also enhanced her demonstrated ability to work successfully with First Nations in project management and program development. She is with this First Nation, which they're going to talk about as their capital projects manager. I didn't want to, dishonor them by trying to pronounce their name. So they're going to share which First Nation they're involved in about this project. In a moment. She's also skilled in managing government programs and projects, proposal writing, and supporting mentorship models and building local capacity. We're here for that. She has many years of experience working in contaminated soils projects, infrastructure, housing, climate adaptation, and clean energy projects. She is an administration professional, graduated with a bachelor's degree from Thompson Rivers University, majoring in management. Woo! So we are in good hands this afternoon. We look forward to hearing about this community, this project. And I always find, whenever I walk away from these sessions together, I gain a little more knowledge. I have a little more inspiration in my heart and carry that hope, because there is some good work that's going on in our nations and our organizations, our communities, and across this country. So we're delighted that you have joined us this afternoon. Again, I'm using that word delighted. I must be really delighted. So thank you for being here. And I'm passing this virtual mic over to you two.
Thanks so much, Michelle. So we're definitely all downhill on the awesomeness of that intro. Thank you. This is a wonderful way to start us off. We'll try to keep that energy up. Jamie and I are going to share the slides just to help us have some visuals to talk through our story today. And yeah, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. Really appreciate being able to share what we've got for the next few little time together. So just to check, thumbs up, Michelle, looks good? Okay, great. So yeah, just grateful to be jointly presenting this with Jamie. Here's our headshots. You just heard our introductions, so thank you, Michelle. And so what we're hoping to do today and sharing with you is a bit of just walking through the organizations, so the Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis First Nation and Island Coastal Economic Trust. We'll talk a bit about the trust as a model of regional economic development. Jamie's got just so many inspiring things that are happening in Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis territory projects they're leading. And then we'll talk about our vision for regional development on coastal BC going forward. And I just maybe might mention, if there's questions as you go, please put them in the chat. As Michelle said, I can't see that just because I've got my screen fully aware. So we'll just go through our talk and then we'll definitely make time for the questions. So thanks. So, honored to be able to just acknowledge Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis people. You can see on the map here of the coast, so we've got little insets. You can see where Vancouver is for relation to that geography. So in the North Coast, Broughton Archipelago, beautiful territories, and you can see some of the major landmarks. But we'll talk a bit about Gwiasut'nuxw in our talk today, and Guilford Island and the surrounding areas when Jamie speaks to those projects. So it gives you a feel. And likewise, Island Coastal Economic Trust. So we're working for all the communities across Vancouver Island here on the coast, and we go down to Howe Sound, Gambier Island, all the way up to Cape Caution. So from the territories of the Squamish people to the territories of the Kwikwasut'inuxw and North Island First Nations communities. And we'll talk a bit about how we do that, just to give you a bit of a flavor of how this all works out here. Really important to acknowledge, so I'm privileged to join you today from the ancestral territories, the Pəntl'áč, the Ixen, and the Comox peoples here in the Comox Valley, as Michelle had noted. As a trust, we really work in those close reciprocal relationships with coastal communities and noting the language. There's many different cultures, histories, shared histories, unique histories across the lands and waters that we work within. The Kwakwala, Nuchalmouth, Jutham, Lakwotok, Pəntl'áč, Shisha, Shishalam, Squamish, Hulkameelam, Dididok, Senchotham, Lekwungen, and Sioux-speaking peoples. So privileged to join you today and to be working with these nations across the region. So just a quick introduction about this trust that I work for is we empower coastal communities. We have the funding, we bring capacity, and we work directly in service of communities across the region that I just showed on the map. Our real focus is strengthening well-being, advancing self-determination, building community resiliency. So that means diversifying the economy, healthy people, healthy communities, and really thinking about innovative ways, and privileged to be here on the Innovate BC webinar series, right? So talk a bit about that. Founding of the trust, to give you a feel for this, is that the trust was founded 2006, so been around for a few years now, and we were founded by the provincial government with $50 million. They further invested $10 million later, a few years ago, into continuing this trust, and we'll talk about the future ahead. We've got some really exciting things going on that communities are looking to do. We're uniquely independent from government. We work very differently than government, but complementary. Whenever there's funding available, we work for communities. And our board's comprised of locally elected, local government leaders, First Nations leaders, and board recruited individuals. It's a good representation of people from all across this region. Investing in communities, so the trust so far has invested more than our founding capital, 56 million into projects, and communities have really used that to leverage new investment into the region. So when we think about economic development impact here on the coast, it's over 300 million in direct impact to date and growing. And what's exceptional about it is that the community's ownership of and confidence in the trust, they lead it, we work for them, they're the board, they're the advisors, and they're the communities. It's a model that really centers upon community leadership. So I actually just spoke a bit to this, but what's really neat about the model of the trust is that we're reducing communities' reliance on provincial or federal governments to fund key initiatives. So rather than looking at call for proposals that might come and go from different times, government has some great funding initiatives, but they're always very strategic around certain topics. Where the trust fits in is that we're flexible and we're community-led, so that this funding's always there. So we're the community's own equity to put into projects and funds, so they don't have to raise debt, that they can attract and secure other sources of funding, including from the private sector. And we fund infrastructure, startups, and anything that communities really want to do that has an economic development focus. So there's a wide range of things that we get into, and you'll see that in Jamie's remarks today, that quite a number of things that we can invest in. And the other thing about the trust is that we serve like a really important coordination function in our region. People, the leaders from across the region get together, they work through what proposals come to the trust, talk about them, share learnings with each other, and ultimately support each other through making recommendations for funding approval. So rather than it going into a process or system where it's unclear how the decisions are made, it's very transparent and very collaborative process. And all communities have an equal voice regardless of their size. So though we do have large centers like the city of Nanaimo, we also have very small communities, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, and they all have an equal say in the process. I'll just touch really quickly on our funding program so you get a flavor of the themes that we do, and then I'll pass it to Jamie. So in terms of our funding programs, really the main priority of the trust is to fund capital projects and innovation across the region, and you'll see examples that Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis people have done over the last 10 to 15 years with the trust. We're also looking to support communities' investment readiness and capacity building, to whether that make their own investments or attract outside investment to their communities or further capacity building. A lot of focus on that. We recognize community placemaking is super important, places that people can socialize, gather, and be in a healthy place in their community. And we also really try to focus that on how to support local businesses so that people are coming into a community center and they're also supporting the small business economy through that. Rural recovery, there's been a lot of devastating effects of the pandemic. We're now looking at lots of forest sector impacts, so we do partner with the provincial government and deliver funding that supports communities doing recovery work and transition work with sectors of the economy. And lastly, really wanted to get youth and people from remote communities out to learning events, conventions, courses, all kinds of things where you can learn about best practices in economic development or other wisdom that can be gleaned from training programs, etc. So we offer a range of scholarships and bursaries, and again, really targeting that at people in remote and rural communities and youth. Jamie, I'm going to pass it to you, and you just tell me how you want to move through the slides. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Brodie. Just to give a little context on my relationship with Brodie. Brodie used to be the CEO for Coast Fund, and I used to work for Kwikwasut'inuxw Nation for about 10 years. I lived on reserve there, and I worked very closely with him and his staff, and developed a really strong relationship with the people there. And when he describes it as being an interactive process, you know, I don't think he gives that enough credit, because, you know, most of the time you know, you write your proposal, you send it in, and you wait for months, you know, trying to wonder if you were successful or not. Whereas with the model that Brodie's describing, and I'm really glad that he's brought that to iced tea, as we call it, rather than its full name. And you know, it's really great because the process includes sending in a proposal. You know, they have a meeting with you. You know, it can be in person, it can be on Zoom. You go through the proposal. You know, they ask you questions. They, you know, kind of walk you through how you can make it more effective. And you know, make it so that it's a better representation of what your nation is trying to accomplish. So I really appreciate that from Brodie and his staff. He's got some really great staff. I see Amanda is one of his staff. She's on right now, and we met with her yesterday at Campbell River with our council, and it was really great getting to know Amanda as well. And the other one I work very closely with iced tea is Denise. And you know, Denise is one of the ones that go through the proposal with you and make suggestions for more inclusion or more detail or better clarification. So I can't say enough about iced tea and their staff and their dedication to First Nations progress. So the next few slides, we're going to go into some of the projects that Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis has delved into in partnership with iced tea. This first one actually precedes me. I was not involved in this this first project, but I got to hear a really great story about this from Chief Rick Johnson yesterday on this particular project. And so what had happened is, because the government had stymied all our traditional ceremonies, we hadn't used the big house the way it was, you know, intended to be used over a century. This particular big house is over 100 years old. It's the oldest one on the coast, and so it's gone through a few restorations, and one of the restorations that were done was when it wasn't being used in a traditional way. They didn't want it to just sit there, so they had a renovation done to put in a floor, and then they used it for playing like volleyball and sports and things like that. And then when they were allowed to start with ceremonial singing and dancing, drumming, and celebrating, you know, their stories and their songs, they needed to take that floor out and put the traditional sand floor in, and you know, bring this big house back to its traditional purpose in life. And so that's what this $120,000 did for KHFN. It restored this big house so that it could be used for its intended purposes. And you know, what that meant for the community was taking back their identity and celebrating who they are as a First Nations people. And you know, so there's literally no words that can thank, you know, the $120,000 that went into this project. The next piece that iced tea helped with is Echo Bay Marina. In 2019, Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis bought Echo Bay Marina, and it was right when COVID hit. So it was literally, this great big thing that was so anticlimactic because we couldn't even run it. So we bought this marina and there was nothing we could do. Everything was closed. The province was closed down. The clientele is primarily American, with some Canadians, but they couldn't get across the border. So literally this marina was only used by local people, and it ended up being not too bad because we rented out. If you can see in the picture here, that little green roof cabin at the forefront, and the one beside it are the lodges. And so what we did is we rented those lodges out to local industry. So the green roof cabin was rented out to what we call the Batty Group, and they're a research group that in the territory that goes and has a look at how fish farms work and how streams are being restored and those kinds of things. So they would come and they still do. They come and they stay in that green roof cabin. And then the forestry people, and we have a sustainable forest program that where we don't just go and rape and pillage. We have selective logging and we ensure that it's sustainable and we don't take old growth forest and so we allow the forestry people to come and stay at the main lodge there, and then the building that's right furthest away, that's a great big concrete dock barge, and it's actually a bridge from Washington State. And it's got a really great history to it. And when they dismantled that bridge, the former owners brought that piece of the bridge, it's half of the Washington State Bridge, and plunked it into Echo Bay and turned it into a big dining hall. And so that building fits about 100 people all seated at tables, and the former owner had this great big barbecue, and he would do like pig roasts and things like that, and when we took over, it's like, what is that all about? And he said, well, it's a 48-hour marathon where I go and I pick up a pig, and 2 days later I'm serving it to my clientele. He goes, I highly do not recommend that you do that. And we're like, no, I don't think that's gonna happen. So we've had 2 years to kind of think about what we want there. And so we're going to put in a commercial kitchen. I have a couple of proposals out right now for that. And if we're not successful, we'll be coming to Iced Tea for that. And in the front of that particular building, there's actually a gas bar. We have diesel and gas and propane services there to serve the Broughton Archipelago area. So we get a lot of traffic through there. And so those were the things that sustained us over COVID, and we were able to break even. So it worked out okay. But those fingers that you see in between in the middle, those are generally full. And over those 2 years, we didn't have anybody there. And so now last year was our first kind of test season. And, we did pretty good. We turned a profit, and one of the draws that visitors were particularly interested in is that we are building a trail, and most marinas don't have land base. And so we're really fortunate to have land base, because what KHFN did in all their wisdom is they bought all the property that surrounds this whole bay here, and except the park that's on the right-hand side. There's a BC park there, and we're actually in talks right now. I've got this amazing group together to try and get that property back to KHFN, and that includes the Ministry of Forestry, the District of Waddington, the school district. There was the council there, the Echo Bay board was there. It was there was 12 people all discussing how they can give that park back to our nation. So pretty cool. Then Ice-T funded us to do a trail, an interpretive trail that goes around that bay, and we're almost completed it now. It's just the signage that has to go in now. But the interesting part was we posted on our dock, you know, beware of crew working building the trail, and we had 4 main KHFN members that were in charge of making that trail happen, and we had 6 KHFN youth come in and do a month-long shift as well. So, you know, all this work is being done by the local nation, and, you know, they're taking ownership of their territory in these projects. And so, this brings me to the quote on the next slide by Chief Rick Johnson. And, you know, he says, reclaiming ownership of this land within our traditional territory provides more than employment and economic development opportunities for the Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis people. This community-driven initiative gives us more decision-making power in the Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis territories and builds our goal of self-determination. And, you know, Chief Rick Johnson is an amazing guy. You know, these are just not words to him. He lives, breathes, and values these words in all his actions day to day, as well as the rest of the council. They're an amazing group of people, and, you know, they are making things happen for the Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis people. Next. So this is a better picture of where that trail is. So when you can see the bay there, the trail actually goes all the way around that bay, right to where that dock on the other side of the bay is. That dock on the other side is a private dock. That's not ours. We don't manage that or own it. But there's rumors that it's going to come up for sale, and KHFN is showing interest in purchasing that as well. And you know, if we can't you know, get all our rightful territory back through reconciliation or treaty, we'll buy it back 1 acre at a time. And, you know, that's the process we're in right now. And we're also engaged in reconciliation, but it's just such a slow process that, you know, we're working through it with self-determination in mind. And so Ice-T has provided us $109,000, half the amount that it's costed to put this trail in. This trail starts on the far left corner where you can still see the dock there, and it goes right through the trees there, all the way around the bay, and then to the other side where that dock on the other side there is. So it's 1.5 kilometers, and along that trail is Billy Proctor's museum. And Billy Proctor is I think he's 89. Yeah, I think he might be 90 now. I think he just had a birthday. But, you know, he still boats from this remote location. We're 1.5 hours by sea taxi or boat from Port McNeill on Vancouver Island. And I know you guys are based in Ontario, but some of you, but if you look it up, you know, even though we're only an hour and a half from Vancouver Island, there's no ferry, there's no scheduled planes, nothing. So you got to charter a plane, or you got to charter a boat, or you got to own your own boat to get here. And, you know, that brings us to how challenging it is to do a project in a place like this. And so our local people who are the trail builders were so innovative and so smart. They used all local materials. So you know, when they first started, you know, they cleared all the brush on the trail, and you know, I walked through and I went, oh my God, this is just mucky. You know, it's going to be dangerous. And you know, our people are you know, can be quite stoic, and they were looking at me and nodding their head, and they're just like, and they weren't saying, well, okay, well, we'll fix it, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. They just went, and I walked away, and you know, the next day I went to check on them again, and they were gathering clay from another area close by off the trail in 5-gallon buckets and bringing it and putting it in the base of the trail. So it was no longer mucky, because clay doesn't allow water to pool there. And so I was just like, oh, so they, you know, they literally problem solved it with their own knowledge of the materials in that area. And then I'm going, well, now, you know, that's really great that it's not mucky anymore, but you know, now it's a bit slippery. You know, should I bring gravel in or sand, or what do you think? And again, they went, and I left them to it. And the next day I came back, and they had taken all the rotten logs and broke it down into a mulch and spread it all through the clay. And I tell you, I had not been more impressed in my entire life, because this trail was now mud proof, and it was skid proof, and it was all through the natural materials that are found on site. And you know, that is the value of using your local people. Next. So after Echo Bay, we also decided that we wanted to get into the kayak tourism business. And we wanted to put a campground similar to what you see in this picture here. And so Ice-T has provided $50,000 towards a $300,000 project where we're going to put 10 tent pads out, and then a cook shack, and some eco toilets and showers in place. And so originally we were going to put this project in Buddy Bay, that's just south of on the reserve that Gwiasdum's village is on. And when I arrived, that was the plan. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, so why are you putting a campsite in on reserve territory when you've got a whole territory out there that you could put that on, and you can reserve this property for putting in a subdivision for more people to come home to work for these economic developments? And they just went, wow, you know, that's a really great idea. So Council Mike Willie and Councilman Herb Chamberlain and myself and a few other people went out on the boat, and we went and looked around the territory for the perfect place. And we came across Fox Group Islands, and it has a beautiful traditional name, but I haven't learned to master that yet. So when you see promotional pieces on this in the future, because they will be coming out, it'll have the traditional name attached, but also Fox Group Island. So we are just starting on completing this portion of the project. It got delayed a bit by trying to figure out where the perfect location for this would be. And now we're just in love with the space that it's going in, and it looks quite similar to this, but it trails back into the islands, and it has beautiful openings in the trees and the rocks, and it's a magical looking place. So we're looking forward to the outcome of that project. And this is probably my favorite funding that ICE-T provided. It was actually to hire me. I actually came to KHFN by accident. As I outlined at the beginning, I worked for 10 years. I'm married into the Kwikwasut'inuxw Nation up on the Central Coast, and I worked and lived with them for 10 years, and it came to a point where we were looking for new adventure and new work opportunities. I was opening my consulting business with Raven Wing Projects, and an opportunity came up for the Echo Bay Marina for a general manager. And so my spouse, Darren Edgar, he applied for that job, and he got picked up, and so he's the one that's had to do the recovery from the COVID years and put in all that work. And I was working alongside of him, and just pitching in and helping out, and it came to the council's attention that I had some skills in proposal writing and grant writing, and this funding pot came to them, and they asked if I was interested to take that on. So I said, sure, yeah, I'd love to do that for you guys. And since I was living in Echo Bay, and that's where the money needed to go, it was a perfect marriage, perfect union. And so I went about my business, and got the trail project going, and some other things going, and then I was invited to the village to have a look around, and I was like, my wheelhouse of experience is really in infrastructure, because without solid infrastructure, you can't have healthy people, and you can't have healthy economics. So if you guys are interested, I'd really love to expand my involvement with you guys, and take on all your capital projects. And so they thought that was a great idea, and we've been working together ever since. Next. One of the projects that I got involved in with is the hybrid solar project. Because Guilford Island is remote and off-grid, they were running off generators. There was a 150 kilowatt generator and a 200 kilowatt generator, and they went back and forth between those, and the GHGs coming off of that were kind of a concern. So because they're environmentally conscientious, and they wanted to move forward in a way that that their values showed through. So they got involved in this project originally right before COVID, and it it had a lot of challenges through that period of time. So when I came on board, I acted as a support for pulling this project through. And now we're actually right now we're pulling it all to its conclusion, and the panels are on every house with metal roofs. We've got panels on the big house. We've got panels on the new health admin building that we're building. And it's a shame I didn't get a picture of that in here because it's absolutely beautiful. We're 90% complete on that building as well. And I took over the project management of that building as well. And so we put solar on that one, and the bunkhouse has solar on it, and it all funnels into a 1.7 megawatt storage battery unit, and it is now set up so that it seamlessly works between the generators and the battery pack, and so that there's no discontinuation of power when they flip it back and forth for maintenance needs. And all the solar panels can be individually backed off or turned up higher. It's all online, so I can look online to make sure that everything's working right. Our maintenance guys can look at everything running to make sure everything's working right. And this is just another example of the clean energy target that Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis people really want to engage and invest in. Next. So one of the things we struggle with is because we don't have internet that is viable. It's really basic. I mean, when I used to smoke, I used to laugh because when you're on dial-up, you could smoke a whole cigarette before the page turned. And I haven't smoked for 10 years now, but when I got here and I experienced that, that's exactly the thought that came to my mind. Jesus, I could smoke a whole cigarette before this page turns. But so one of the things that we have engaged with is the City West partnership to bring the fiber optic cable into the village. And it wasn't part of my repertoire of experience. So my go-to guy was Brodie Guy. And so I went to Brodie and I said, what is all this? And what is our, options and opportunities here? And Brodie's not the kind of guy that says, well, you should do this and you should do that. He likes to kind of give you the overall, tell you what options are there, explain how, an opportunity can really help out. And then he lets you make your own choices. And in that conversation, he also committed $10,000 to the installation of this fiber optic into the village. So that led me to start up conversations with City West and Connected Coast. And in the end, in consultation with membership in a community meeting and discussions with council, we decided that we are going to move forward with that. And it's coming all the way down the coast and coming up the coast, and we're kind of in the middle. So we're looking at probably this fall or summer, late summer, when that cable comes to our doorstop, and then we will wire up the rest of the village in the fall, and will likely be on this in early 2024. And so what that's going to do for us is we're going to be able to run our brand new health center, in such a way we can have teledoctors and online physio and those kinds of services that can't be done currently. And, you know, right now we're suffering because of the crisis in the medical field with doctors. And, you know, we had a circuit doctor, and now we're being told that, you know, we may not be getting that doctor, and, you know, we don't even know if we're going to get one. So it's really important for us to have these amenities so that we can be creative and do things in other ways. And second to that, we don't have a school. And because we don't have a school, the only members that can live at home are either the healthy elders or the young adults with no children. And, you know, that leaves a big socioeconomic gap, you know, specifically the gap of people that we need to work in places like the kayak camp and the Echo Bay Marina. So everything is like a big puzzle with a lot of pieces. And I kind of feel like my job as the capital project manager is to be the hub and bring all those pieces into some kind of array of making sense. And you know, learning the languages of all the people involved with it, including, you know, the engineers, the environmentalists, the membership, the council, consultants, and I make all their languages make sense to everyone, and so that there's transparency and clarity about how we're moving forward and that we're doing it in a good way. And you know, once we get a school in here, we can start talking about increasing our population and inviting families to come live. And when I was talking about moving the kayak camp from Brodie Bay, that's exactly where we want to put a new subdivision to invite these families to come home. So it's all tic-tac-toe. And, you know, we have to, you know, when ISK asked me, do you want to prioritize the water or do you want to prioritize the road? And I looked at him and I said, you know, everything is integrated. Everything, you know, has to be done in a way that it complements each other. I said, so when you ask me to prioritize, do we want, you know, our water, you know, dealt with, or do we want our roads dealt with? You're asking me which kid I want to give up. And to me, you know, that's exactly what, you know, ISK is doing. And I know they, you know, they don't understand it in that way because it's just a job for them. And some of them are very, very caring, don't get me wrong. And most of the ones I deal with are very, very caring, because, you know, I try to bring that out in them. And, you know, when I said that, you know, they kind of put their head down, they kind of put their pen down, they're kind of like, yeah, so how do you see this moving forward? And, you know, so I went through, you know, kind of a work plan where, you know, we can bring everything together and make this, you know, a diamond on the coast where, you know, we have world-class tourism wanting to come to Guilford Island to see our Kwakwalawati Echo Bay Marina and our Gwiasdum's village of Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis people. And, you know, that's the dream that our membership has, our people have. And that's what, you know, my intention moving forward is to bring out in this. Next. So in expanding Kwakwalawati Echo Bay Marina and Gwiasdum's village, because we do want to work hand in hand, the two are located on the same island, but they're about a 10-minute boat ride between. And my spouse and I, we have a 19-foot boat that so we can get around, you know, quite easily in good weather. 19-foot boat doesn't do the winter, you know, 5-foot swells. So in the winter we get through with a sea taxi, and in the other 3 seasons we run around in our own boat. And you know, one of our visions is to bring those kids to Gwiasut'inuxw and get them their SVOPs, the small vessel operators, and their own little boats, and you know, get them to be ocean people again, get them to be one with, you know, their environment and their you know, I always believe that, you know, being an ocean person is in your DNA, and we want to bring that back. And so in order to fulfill this vision, we've got to provide houses for the people we want to bring home, to build capacity and gain workers so that we can, you know, put in our restaurant, and we want to expand our store services. There's a little store in Echo Bay, and you know, expand our fuel services. We want to move onto land. We bought 100 acres that surround that Echo Bay that we showed you, and you know, we've got opportunities to put in individual land cabins for tourism. We can put in a hotel. We've been researching a run-of-the-river hydro installation, so that you know, we're not running generators in Echo Bay as well, because that is what we're doing at this point. At this point, we have 3 generators that we go between, that provide power to Echo Bay, and we're looking into either run of the river or a small solar project that mirrors what we did in Gwiasut'inuxw. But we haven't got that far yet. But one of the other things that we were kind of thinking about, and you know, we're at the infancy of thought process on this one, but you know, we've heard that, you know, cloud storage for data and crypto and things like that are running out. You know, it needs a lot of space. It needs to be a place where the sound doesn't bother anybody. And you know, we were kind of thinking about it, and we thought, well, you know, it doesn't take a lot of manpower to run, but what it could do is provide IT jobs. And what we could do is we could put in a cloud storage warehouse, and you know, with the proceeds, we could do bursaries and scholarships for our kids to take IT training, and you know, they can be the leaders in this, because you know, I'm just going to be the first to tell you, you know, I had Windows 95 and it blue screened out all the time, and I had to learn how that all worked, and I did, and I was pretty proud of myself and thought I was pretty techie. But when it comes to this day and age, I'm so far behind now. And I'm just, you know, grateful that our kids are just such whizzes at it. And you know, when I run into a problem I can't solve, I go to a young person to help me out. And yeah, so from here, you know, we've just got so many opportunities and so many dreams moving forward that, you know, I'm just really grateful to be part of it, and I'm just really grateful to have support from people like Brodie and ICT.
It's something to hear your stories, but if anybody gets a chance to see Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis territory at some point in your life, it's off the charts, and I just can't say enough of the leadership of the chief and council, the hereditary chiefs, of course, included, and you, Jamie. It's just wonderful to see what you're doing for the elders and the youth and everybody. It's very inclusive and really innovative when you think about all those different threads and how they all tie together, and how you just shared that. Like, it's really touching. Thank you. And very hopeful and inspiring. I'll just take a couple of minutes, and I know we probably want to have time for questions too, but we want to share something that we're really excited about. Jamie, Chief and Council of Kwikwasut'inuxw, and coastal communities all across where we work here have been in conversations, and in some cases for many years, but definitely the last year, some really focused conversations of envisioning the shift. And it's really like thinking about how Kwikwasut'inuxw Haxwa'mis is showing that leadership in what was just shared. And how can that happen across the coast of BC? How can communities be really self-determining? People coming back home, people growing up in their culture, people having good livelihoods and good jobs, sustainable, clean energy, broadband internet, all these things. It's about well-being, right? And it's about like why we live in these places and how we make this better for ourselves, but really our children and those not yet born, right? So that's really what we think about in our vision together, is really coming from the leadership of the communities across the coast. And so we think about this, and there's many different terms, but we think of it in terms of a regenerative economic model, not one of extraction, but one of like inclusion and one of supporting and uplifting each other. And through that vision, what we're really talking about is how First Nations and local governments, so all the community governments in the region, whether it's Indigenous or settler communities, all working together, each having a goal, but trying to work together in a common framework of prosperity and stewardship of this trust, and how it can be supportive long-term and build upon the kinds of things that we were just learning about from Jamie for generations to come. So the first thing, there's two things that we were looking to actually transform the trust. It's been really successful, but there's lots more we can do, and there's huge challenges communities are facing today on the coast. So the first is to transform the trust into one that can be sustainably financed for generations. And we've modeled this. We have a goal of building it to at least $150 million regional trust. There's over 100 communities that we work in service of. And so the goal is to be able to provide constant long-term source of self-determined financing for the types of projects we're just talking about. And so it's not about a call for proposals, it's not about a scarcity mindset, it's about long-term planning and intergenerational thinking is what we want to shift to, and in terms of how we think about our economy and what we're doing. And the second one, and it's absolutely inherent, but definitely can be accomplished once there's the financing in tandem with this, is that First Nations should be self-determining around being fully engaged in the co-governance of the trust. Now, when the trust was created by the provincial government, it was created under an act of legislation, and it didn't mention Aboriginal, Indigenous, or First Nations anywhere in its act in those days. That's not a long time ago, 2006, but it does tell us, and it shows us the kind of thinking of that day. And really the leadership across the coast is saying, no, this is something that should be a full co-governance model. And when we think of it being in that model, as a regional economic development organization, that would be the first of its type in Canada. There's many amazing AFIs, Aboriginal financial institutions. There's many non-Indigenous economic development organizations, but there hasn't been that co-governance and that framework to work together and really have a table of economic decision-making that's shared. And I just want to note the leadership of these four individuals. Committee, I believe, was chaired by Dr. Judith Sayers, who's really well known here on our coast, and we're really grateful for this independent review. It happens every 5 years of the trust, and you can read it yourself, but it was, now we're into 16 years, but it's really time to think about recapitalizing this trust, but really in tandem with that, and this is a welcome figure actually from Guayastam, so it's kind of neat. They said that it's past time Indigenous governments have a defined role in trust governance, and there's an opportunity to recapitalize and shift this whole model. So it was really wonderful to hear that validation from an independent review of what the communities are thinking about and what our vision is going forward. And then we get the province of BC, and here in British Columbia we have the DRIPA, right, the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, and they have an action plan, and they named us in an action to develop a mechanism to ensure the inclusion of First Nations at regional decision-making levels. So these are sequential actions, and you can see how this is building to something good that's happening, and it comes from that leadership in communities, the voice and the focus, the bravery and courageousness that is all involved with it as well, to change these systems and to make life better for each other. Here's a quote, and I'll raise my hands to Don Svanbeck for this, and just with gratitude in terms of sharing this, that the success of the Numgis First Nation in creating economic opportunities for the whole and their North Vancouver Island region is through partners such as with the Trust, is really a testament to the importance of a model of inclusion, shared decision-making, and sustainable economic planning throughout their territories, right? It's not that one community thinks one way and one another, that's fine, but like how can you talk and collaborate and uplift each other and do things in a smart way that's inclusive. And that's what the leadership of the Numgies has always been about. So just to close in our comments, in our work ahead, everything that Jamie's spoken about and what I've spoken about, it's about the relationships. It's about trust between us, being able to depend on each other, be able to be vulnerable and talk about the challenges we face together, and to really work not transactionally, but in reciprocity, and to think long term as we do this. And so I've got some words on this page, but I'll just skip over it to really just say, in the language of the people here, the Kwakwala speaking people, Gaelic Asla, thank you for allowing us to share our story here today. We're really hopeful about the future and appreciate being able to share this with you. Thank you for hosting us, Michelle, as well.
Wow. Wow. The word, Jamie, you used earlier, a diamond on the coast, what has transpired, all of the vision, the hard work, the good energy, the money, but also the vision that you have moving forward. It's beautiful. So thank you so much, both of you, for being here and sharing. And honestly, not too often do we walk away in economic development saying, wow, I'm so inspired, right? As this story is beautiful. I appreciate also the pictures. We don't have time. Is there one question out there that anyone wants to ask before we close today's webinar? It was a great presentation.
I would like to address the one question that was there about the Starlink. That's actually a great suggestion. We do have Starlink in the Echo Bay Marina. We tried to get Starlink for the Guayas village, and there's a 1-year wait list. So if there's a 1-year wait list for Starlink, we might as well, wait for the fiber optic that is, infallible. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. All right, Jamie and Brodie. Oh, what an honor to have had you here. Thank you. Continue the good work. Again, I think you're also thinking about those young kids, the kids who haven't even been born yet. You're setting up for a really strong community and well-being. So thank you for all that you do. Oh, what an inspiration. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Ila Casa.